Hello, welcome to lesson 28. This is called measuring time. Now this is going to be a pretty simple lesson. Most of you are going to know this information, but there'll be some vocabulary words that we're going to practice and you might not be as familiar with, but we will become more and more familiar with them. Now, easy review, which most of you already know, is that in one day, we measure each day by hours. We have 24 hours in one day from 12 a.m. all the way till 12 a.m. the next day is 24 hours. Then we also have 1 hour contains 60 minutes. So from 1 o'clock till 2 o'clock, there's 60 minutes between that whole time period. And within each minute, we have 60 seconds. So 60 seconds is 1 minute, 60 minutes is 1 hour, and we have 24 hours in one full day. Now, our years are broken up, in between days, and we have 365 and 1/4 of a day to measure how long it takes for our Earth to revolve around our sun completely. It takes 365 and 1/4 of a day, and that's what we call a year. However, we're going to call it, well, it does take a year, and that's one revolution completely around the sun. So, because we have this extra 1/4 of a day, if we were to have 365 days every single year, our seasons would actually be kind of off. They would be off. We'd be having maybe the start of spring wouldn't be until June. Or the start of winter wouldn't be until January or February instead of December. So it would throw us off unless we added an extra day every 4 years. So if we had 1/4 plus another 4th plus another 4th plus another 4th, and within 4 years, we add an extra whole day to our calendar, which is why we have what's called a leap year. Now, fortunately, we actually have a leap year coming up in 2016. 2016 will be a leap year, meaning we'll have 366 days in the full calendar year. This year, in 2015, we have 365 days. So that's what's called a common year. So within 3 years in a row, we have what's called a common year, and then every 4th year, we have a leap year. Now, within years, whenever we measure chunks of years, such as 10 years, we call that a decade. So most of you are 1 decade old. I am 2 decades old. And century is 1 year. So whenever, I know a lot of you have probably heard that, but maybe the 21st century. That's the century that we live in. That's a span of 100 years. Now, it is the year 2015, which you actually can't see that up at the top, but it is the year 2015, and it's the 21st century, not the 20th century, because starting from the very first, or 0 would be, I guess it would be, or the year 1 AD, then that would be, between that and the year 100 was the 1st century. Then the 2nd century would be the year 100 to the year 200 would be the 2nd century. Between the year 200 to the year 300, it would be the 4th century. So it keeps adding on, and during that time span, it's almost, you almost want to just jump ahead one century. So I was born in the 20th century, that was the 1900s, and you were born in the 21st century, which is during the 2000s. I guess you would say, yeah, it is the 2000s. Then we also have the millennium. Now, I haven't lived, fortunately, during a new millennium. So between 1999 and 2000, that was a new 1,000-year period. And unfortunately, none of you are going to live to see the next millennium because that would be the year 3000, which a lot of us are not, well, none of us alive today will be alive during the year 3000 because that is more than 900 years away. So millennium is 1,000 years. A century is a 100-year time span. So a lot of you will probably be alive Maybe a lot. Maybe some of you, actually, some of you will maybe be alive to see the next century, to see the year 2100. I probably won't be. Actually, I won't be, because that would be 110 years old. And decade is worth 10 years. So example 1 says a century is how many decades. So I have 100 years in a century, but I want to say how many decades does it take to make 100 years? I want you to go ahead and write your answer down in your spiral. For example 1, a century is how many decades? How many decades does it take to make 100 years? And if you answered 10 decades, you would be correct. 10 decades equals a century. I'm not going to answer 100 because that's how many years. A decade, remember, is 10 years. So if I say 10 decades, that would be 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 years altogether. Now we have example 3. We skipped example 2, but I'm going to show you example 3. And fortunately, I have a little clock because it's kind of hard to draw time on a whiteboard. Now, within this clock, this time says 9:05. I have 5 minutes after the 9 o'clock hour. So this would be 9 o'clock, and I have 5 minutes over, meaning it's at the 1. So this shows 5 minutes after 9 o'clock, and we're going to say, for example 3, if it is morning, then what time is it? It would be written as 9:05, and I have to label, if it's morning, we call it AM. If it's afternoon, we say PM. So it'd be 9:05 AM. And then it asks, what time will it be in 3 hours? Well, I have 9:05 AM, so I'm going to move the clock around. There's 1 hour, 5 minutes after the hour. There's 2 hours and 3 hours, off a little bit. There we go. So what time would it be? It would actually be 12:05 p.m. because if it's morning at 12 o'clock, it's now noon. It's 12 p.m. So 5 minutes after, we're still in the p.m. time span. It is 12:05 p.m. in 3 hours. You have to label correctly. It's 12:05 a.m. That would be your sleeping time. That's in the middle of the night. 12:05 p.m. is the afternoon hour. So that's what time it would be in 3 hours. Now for the practice set, what I want you to do is 4 centuries. Letter A, 4 centuries is how many years? So you are asking how many years are in 4 centuries? Again, it would be very important for you to go ahead and write these down because you will see a lot of problems that you will see decade, century, and millennium, and you'll need to know how many years each of those are worth. So 4 centuries is how many years? And letter D, what is the name for 1/10 of a century? So if I have 1/10 of 100 years, what do I call that? Go ahead and write your answers down. We'll review over them in class, and we'll probably be doing more of the practice set together with time and looking at calendars as well. Thank you so much.